Martin Osei had not planned to be the most interesting person in the room that afternoon. He rarely did. That was not the kind of man he was. He stood near the back of the registration line at the Chicago Merchandise Mart, holding a canvas tote bag that had been washed so many times the logo on the side had faded to a ghost of itself. The bag held a laptop, a water bottle, and a folder with printed notes he had put together over the previous 3 weeks. His daughter Elise was beside him, 12 years old, wearing her school backpack because they had come straight from pickup, and she was reading something on her phone with the concentrated silence of a child who understood that her father was occupied with something important. Martin was 51. He had spent 23 years in infrastructure security. He had worked for 2 federal agencies, 1 major hospital network, and a private firm that no longer existed. He had also spent the last 4 years doing most of that work from a kitchen table in Evanston because his wife had died of an aneurysm on a Tuesday morning without any warning, and after that, certain things in his life had been reorganized around what mattered and what did not. What mattered was the girl beside him. He shifted the tote bag to his other shoulder and looked up at the screen above the registration desk. The annual Tech Forward Summit had drawn nearly 800 attendees this year. He had not registered as an attendee. He had been invited by a man named James Paulson, who ran vendor relations for a company called Volaris Solutions, and who had specifically asked Martin to come and look at the live demonstration of their new financial data platform before it went in front of the institutional clients, who would be asked to commit to it that day. James had sent 3 emails and a phone call. Martin had taken the phone call from the car line at Elise's school. He was not sure James Paulson was still employed by Volaris Solutions. He had not been able to reach him in the last 48 hours. The woman behind the registration desk looked at the invitation on Martin's phone, looked at the tote bag, looked at Elise, and then looked at the badge sheet in front of her with the expression of someone solving a problem they had not been trained to solve. "I don't see a guest badge for a +1, she said. "She's not a +1, Martin said. "She's my daughter. She's 12. The floor is for registered attendees and credentialed press. I understand that. Is there a room where she can wait? Or an area?" The woman typed something. She was still typing when a voice came from behind Martin, carrying the specific tone of someone who did not need to raise it to be heard. "Rebecca, what's the holdup?" The woman at the desk, Rebecca, straightened slightly. Martin turned. The woman walking toward them was Cassandra Vole. He recognized her from the Volaris website and from 3 industry profiles he had read in the last 2 weeks. Chief Executive Officer, 43 years old. A background in enterprise software and 2 successful exits before she had taken the Volaris position 18 months ago. She was wearing a charcoal blazer and moving with the energy of someone whose morning had already been long and was about to get longer. She looked at Martin, then at the tote bag, then at Elise. "Who are you with?" she said. "My name is Martin Osei. I was invited by James Paulson to review the platform architecture before the demo." Something moved across Cassandra Vole's face, a flicker of recognition, or maybe something else. "James is no longer with us," she said. "As of yesterday." Martin absorbed that. "I'm sorry to hear it. The invitation isn't active." She said it simply, without apology, the way someone states a weather condition. "I understand. But the concern I came to discuss is still active." Someone behind Martin in line shifted. Someone else cleared their throat. The lobby of the merchandise mart had a particular acoustic quality that carried sound farther than you expected, and a small knot of people near the press area had turned to watch the exchange with the idle attention of people waiting for something to happen. Cassandra Vole looked at the tote bag again. There was the faintest curve at the corner of her mouth. Not a smile exactly, more the involuntary expression of a person who has already reached a conclusion. "We have 60 clients on this floor in 3 hours," she said. "Our technical team is fully staffed. I appreciate the concern, but I'm not sure what you think you're going to find that our people haven't already." There's a session token validation issue in your API gateway, Martin said. It came out flat and quiet, the way he said most things. The tokens aren't being rotated on role escalation. Someone with read-only access can hold a token through a privilege change and retain elevated permissions until the session expires. In a live demo environment with real client data on screen, that's a significant exposure. The lobby was quieter than it had been a moment before. Cassandra Vole looked at him with the careful expression of someone recalibrating. "Our team ran a full security audit last week," she said. "I know. I read the summary James forwarded to me. The audit tested for external intrusion. It didn't test for internal privilege escalation." Elise looked up from her phone. She was watching her father the way she had learned to watch him when he used that voice, the calm one, the one that meant he was not going to back down. Cassandra Vole glanced at Elise, then back at Martin. "I'm not going to delay the setup to have this conversation in a lobby," she said. "If you want, you can submit your findings through our security disclosure portal. We'll review them in the standard time frame." "The demo is in 3 hours," Martin said. "Standard time frame is 14 business days. That's how our process works." She said something brief to Rebecca and turned and walked back toward the elevator bank. 2 men in Volaris lanyards followed her without looking at Martin. The lobby resumed its ordinary noise. Martin stood there for a moment. He looked at the registration desk. Then he looked at Elise. "Are you okay?" she asked. "Fine," he said. "What are you going to do?" He looked at the elevator she had taken, then at the event floor map on the board beside the registration desk. Then he sat down on the low bench against the wall, took his laptop out of the tote bag, and opened it. Elise sat beside him and did not ask any more questions. She had learned that too. The laptop was a ThinkPad from 2017. It had a dent on the left corner, from when it had fallen off the kitchen table the previous winter, and the charging port required the cable to be angled at precisely 11 o'clock, or it would lose connection. Martin had replaced the battery twice and upgraded the RAM, and never once considered buying a different machine because it worked and it had everything on it. And he did not replace things that still worked. He connected to the guest Wi-Fi, opened a browser, and pulled up the public-facing API documentation that Volaris had published in their developer portal 8 months ago. He had read it before. He read it again. He was looking for something specific. A man in a Volaris shirt walked past, stopped, looked at the laptop. "The summit Wi-Fi is for registered attendees," the man said. Martin looked up. "I'm connected to the building's public network." The man looked at the laptop again with the expression of someone who felt something was wrong but could not identify what. Then he kept walking. Martin had not been able to get onto the Volaris platform itself. He didn't need to. The documentation told him what the authentication flow was supposed to look like, and the behavior he had observed in a sandboxed environment James Paulson had provisioned for him 3 weeks ago told him what it actually looked like. The gap between those two things was what he had driven 40 minutes to talk about. He opened his notes folder and found the write-up he had done. 6 pages, single-spaced. He had formatted it the way he formatted things for federal clients. Clear headings, proof of concept steps, remediation recommendations in order of complexity. He thought about the 60 clients on the floor upstairs. He thought about what kind of data would be on the demo screens. Financial institutions, Volaris's primary market, ran on account data, transaction histories, compliance records. The kind of data where a privilege escalation vulnerability was not an abstract risk. It was a liability. He thought about James Paulson, who had reached out to him because they had worked together briefly in 2019, and who had apparently lost his job the day before this demonstration. He closed his laptop. He put it back in the tote bag. "I need to find the event coordinator," he said to Elise. "Not the CEO lady? Not yet." The event coordinator was a man named Gil Thatcher, whose name Martin had found on the Summit website under logistics staff. It took him 20 minutes to locate Gil Thatcher, who was standing near the audiovisual setup on the second floor, with a tablet and the controlled expression of a man holding 12 things in his head simultaneously. Martin introduced himself. He explained briefly that he had an outstanding security concern about one of the platform demonstrations scheduled for the afternoon session, and that he had been unable to reach the vendor's team through normal channels. Gil Thatcher listened with professional patience. "I'm not able to make decisions about floor access for non-registered. I'm not asking for floor access," Martin said. "I'm asking if there's someone in your technical operations who reviews the security posture of platforms being demoed on your network." That landed differently. Gil Thatcher's expression shifted. "We have a network security team. Can I speak with them?" There was a pause. "Let me make a call." While Gil Thatcher stepped away to make his call, Martin went back downstairs and found Elise where he had left her, on the bench, now doing what appeared to be homework on her phone. She had a math test on Friday. She had told him twice already. He sat beside her. "The CEO lady looked at your laptop bag," Elise said without looking up. "I noticed." "Like it was embarrassing." "Probably. Is it?" Martin looked at the tote bag. The faded logo. The fraying strap he had been meaning to replace for 2 years. "No," he said. "Good." She clicked something on her phone. "Your charger is doing the thing where it looks like it's charging but isn't." He looked down. She was right. He adjusted the cable angle. Gil Thatcher came back with a man named Ross Delaney from the Summit's network security team, who shook Martin's hand and listened to a 5-minute version of what Martin had spent 3 weeks writing 6 pages about. Ross Delaney asked 2 questions. They were good questions. Martin answered them. Ross Delaney looked at Gil Thatcher. "I need to make another call," he said. Elise looked up from her phone. "Things are happening," she said quietly to her father. "Give it a few more minutes." It was 1 hour and 40 minutes before the demonstration when Cassandra Vole found Martin Osei sitting on the second-floor bench outside the network operations room with his laptop open and a cup of coffee that someone had brought him going cold at his elbow. She did not look the same as she had in the lobby. She looked like someone who had just had a conversation she had not expected to have. "Ross Delaney tells me you gave him a full technical brief," she said. "Yes. He says the vulnerability is real." "Yes. He also says you documented it at a level that suggests you've been working on this for some time, 3 weeks. Cassandra Vole sat down. This surprised him. She sat the way busy people sit, on the edge, like the chair is a brief interruption, but she sat. "James Paulson came to you," she said. "He did. He was let go because he had concerns about the platform timeline that he wouldn't drop through normal channels." She paused. "I'm not going to pretend that looks great right now." Martin didn't say anything. "What would it take to address this before the demo?" she asked. "I can walk your team through the remediation steps. The quickest fix is to force token invalidation on role change, which is about 2 hours of implementation if your team knows the codebase. The more complete fix takes longer, but the quick version is enough to close the exposure for today. 2 hours. She looked at the time on her phone. "If your team is as good as your audit implies, probably less." Something shifted in the way she was sitting, not quite a smile. "You drove in from Evanston for this?" "Yes." "With your daughter?" It was pickup day. Cassandra Vole looked across the hall to where Elise had migrated. She was now sitting on the floor with her back against the wall and her legs stretched out, doing homework with a concentration that suggested she had tuned out every adult in the building. "How old?" Cassandra Vole asked. 12. "Does she know what you do?" Martin considered the question honestly. "She knows it matters," he said. "She's not sure of the details." Cassandra Vole was quiet for a moment. Then she stood. "I'll get my technical lead. I'd appreciate it if you'd walk them through the issue yourself. That's all I came to do." The next 90 minutes moved fast. Martin sat in a room with 3 of Valaris's engineers, 2 of whom were sharp, 1 of whom was excellent, and walked them through everything he had found. He had the write-up open on his laptop. He talked through the authentication flow, pulled up the sandbox behavior he had recorded, demonstrated the privilege escalation path step by step. The excellent engineer, a young woman named, she introduced herself quickly in the hallway. Petra started typing before Martin had finished the second paragraph. I see it, Petra said. I see it, yeah. The token lifecycle isn't tied to the role change event, it's only on expiration. She looked at her keyboard, then back at Martin. How did you catch this from the documentation alone? I've seen it before, Martin said. Different architecture, same oversight. Petra nodded once and then stopped asking questions and started working. The two other engineers asked Martin 3 more questions over the next 40 minutes. He answered all of them. At one point, someone brought a second cup of coffee to the table, and he drank it. At 11 minutes before the demonstration was scheduled to begin, Petra leaned back in her chair and rubbed her face with both hands. Token invalidation on role change is live in the demo environment, she said. Staging has it. Production patch will take another pass, but the demo instance is clean. The technical lead, a man named Daniel Cho, who had not been in the room but had been receiving messages from the team the whole time, walked in at that moment and read the screen over Petra's shoulder. He read it twice. He looked at Martin. Who are you again? Martin Osei. Are you currently contracted with anyone? I have a few clients, nothing exclusive. Daniel Cho looked at his phone, typed something, and looked up. Can you stay for the demo? My daughter's been in the hall for 3 hours. We have a hospitality suite on the 4th floor. She can use it. Martin thought about Elise, who had the math test on Friday, and who had been patient in the way that she had learned to be patient, because her father sometimes got into things that took longer than expected. He thought about what he would tell her. Give me 5 minutes, he said. He found Elise where he had left her, still on the floor, back against the wall. She had finished what she was working on and was now reading something that was probably not homework. She looked up when he came around the corner. How bad was it? She asked. Not too bad. Did they fix it? Their team did, yes. She accepted this with the equanimity of a 12-year-old who had grown up watching her father handle things. Are we leaving? They've offered us a room upstairs. You can do your homework properly. Snacks, probably. She considered this. I've already done most of my homework, then snacks. She picked up her backpack. The CEO lady came and talked to you. She did. Was she nicer? Martin thought about how to answer that honestly. She was more accurate, he said. Elise seemed to find this acceptable. She stood and straightened her backpack. Dad? Yeah, that lady at the desk looked at your bag. You mentioned, and then she looked at me. He stopped. I know, I didn't mind. She said it clearly the way she said things she had thought about. I just wanted you to know I noticed and I didn't mind, because you knew what you were doing the whole time. Martin Osei stood in the corridor of the Chicago Merchandise Mart and looked at his daughter for a moment without saying anything. Let's go find the snacks, he said. She grinned. They walked toward the elevator. The demonstration went cleanly. Martin watched from a seat near the back of the room that Daniel Cho had arranged for him. 60 clients in business attire. 3 screens showing live platform behavior. Cassandra Vole at the front of the room with the composure of someone who had decided not to let the morning show. The session token vulnerability did not appear. The data remained where it was supposed to be. The demonstration ran long by 8 minutes, which was within the acceptable margin, and when the final slide went up, the applause was warm and professional. Martin left before the networking portion began. He found Elise in the hospitality suite on the 4th floor. She had eaten 2 sandwiches and was watching something on her phone with earbuds in. She looked up when he came in. Done? She asked. Done. She pulled out her earbuds and put her phone in her backpack. She was 12 years old, and she had been in a building for 4 hours because her father had needed to be there, and she had not complained once. 3 days later, on the Saturday morning when Elise was at her friend Nadia's house for a birthday party, Martin was at the kitchen table with coffee and the paper when his phone rang. The number was a Chicago area code he didn't recognize. "This is Cassandra Vole," the voice said. "I hope it's an acceptable time." "It's fine," Martin said. There was a brief pause on her end. He had the impression she was not accustomed to calls that didn't begin with a structured agenda. "I've been speaking with my board," she said, "and with Daniel Cho. We would like to formally engage you to conduct a comprehensive security review of the Volaris platform. Not a one-time audit. An ongoing relationship, structured however makes sense for your practice." Martin looked at the table. There was a drawing Elise had done the previous week, taped to the wall above the counter, a landscape. Something with mountains and a river, done in colored pencil with the particular devotion of a kid who is teaching herself to draw. "I'm interested," he said. "I want to say something before we get into the specifics," Cassandra Vole said. "What happened on Wednesday? The way I handled it in the lobby, you don't have to." "I do." A brief pause. "You came in with a valid concern through a legitimate channel, with the documentation I would have been relieved to have, and I made a judgment about whether you were worth my attention based on things that had nothing to do with what you actually brought to the table. That was a professional failure on my part, and I want to acknowledge it." Martin sat with that for a moment. "James Paulson knew what he was doing when he called you," she said. "He did. Is there anything you need from me before we arrange a formal meeting?" Martin looked at the drawing on the wall. The river in it was a little uneven, the perspective not quite right, but there was something in the way Elise had colored the light on the mountains that made it look like an actual afternoon, an actual sky, an actual somewhere. "No," he said. "I'll be in touch Monday." He set the phone down and finished his coffee. Outside, the neighborhood was doing what it did on Saturday mornings in late spring. A dog walker, 2 runners, the sound of a lawnmower starting somewhere down the block. The ordinary shape of a day. He thought about Elise's math test on Friday. She had come home with a 94. She had held the paper up when she walked in the door without saying anything, just held it up, and he had taken it from her and looked at it and put it on the table and said good work in the way that meant more than those 2 words. And she had gone to the kitchen to get a snack, like it was nothing, which was exactly the right way to treat a 94. Martin Osei put his coffee cup in the sink, rinsed it, and set it in the drying rack. He had things to do.